laser beam that came into his head, and it was full of geometric patterns. And he had images of Christ figures and ancient civilizations. And this, really blew him away, because he was quite a counterculture guy, and he was involved in, drugs and all kinds of stuff anyway. But even with that experience and with that knowledge of other types of consciousness for escapism or learning, this was something radically different. And he called this experience, he referred to this transcendental mind initially as zebra, and then he called it God. But he eventually settled on this term Valis, okay,
yes.
V-A-L-I-S.
Yes.
And Valis is this kind of laser that knows everything, that has knowledge of everything. And it kind of drove Dick round the twist, really. And he was worried about being surveilled by FBI and MI6 and stuff. His house was broken into, and there's documents stolen from his house, and he obviously got a bit paranoid about that. But for the rest of his life, he struggled to comprehend this experience. And it gave him information about his son that saved his son's life. It gave him information about things that were yet to pass, and it was a genuine, real transcendental experience. And in the end, he wrote down this kind of 8,000-page journal, which he called the Exegesis. And it was Philip K. Dick's, in philosophy. It was his whole cosmology, basically. And one central theme in it was that history stopped in the 1st century AD, and the empire never ended. This dream fragment from earlier on kept recurring, and he believed that Rome was the pinnacle of this evil materialism, which forced the Gnostics underground, which kept the population of Earth enslaved to ridiculous, reductionist worldview and worldly possessions. And Phil Dick believed that Valis communicated with him to help open his mind, and it did it with other people as well.
Yes.
So it's funny. I mean, I came across Valis as a teenager, and I've read it a few times. And the first time I had absolutely no idea what the fuck he was talking about. And then obviously in later life, as my knowledge and my gnosis improved, I couldn't believe how incredible the information was. So Philip Dick had experienced a massive, spontaneous uplink to the field, where a torrent of information piled into his head, and he just didn't know what to do with it. And it is an incredible example of what can happen should a dimensional shift occur, and that kind of thing happens. It means that certain individuals are going to struggle with that. If you've never had it in your consciousness, it's going to be something that you've got no idea about. And just a very quick word on that, his exegesis is basically, loads of thoughts and fragments and notes. And some of it appears in Valis at the back. And just one little paragraph here, that some key points that underpin some of the things we've been talking about tonight.
Yes.
Number one, this is what he wrote. Number one mind there is, but under two principles it contends. Number two, the mind lets in the light, then the dark, in interaction, so time is generated. At the end, mind awards victory to the light, time ceases, and the mind is complete. He causes things to look different, so it would appear time has passed. He being, God perhaps. Mm-hmm. Matter is plastic in the face of mind. One by one, he draws us out of the world. The empire never ended. And it goes on and on and on. And it's very esoteric, but in the light of some of the things we're talking about, it makes incredible sense now. And there's a tremendous amount of reason and balance in what he's saying. So it just goes to show, again, this polarity. Without the knowledge that I had reading Valis, it was just gobbledygook to me.
Right.
Having read it again recently, it was an incredible synchronicity that it should come at that time. And one more little kind of synchro-mystic event that happened was, I was watching an episode of Lost, and there's a character in Lost called Ben, and there's a bit in the recent series where he gets locked up in this room and he says, "Can I have a book to read? I'm kind of going mad here. Can you give me something just to do?" Mm. And the guy who's keeping him in prison gives him a copy of Valis.
There we go.
So that was just when this was coming into my mind. So it's a very neat little wink there by the program makers, because Valis is a key book and it's a key little synchro-mystic resonator.
Very interesting. And I mean, I've always been fascinated by Philip work, especially, of course, the film versions of his work. And I haven't actually read Valis. I've been wanting to for a long time, and I've heard so much about it. But again,
get it and read it, because there's the information in there. It's a very interesting novel, but the information in there, in light of the things that we know, in inverted commas, really brings a new level of information and a new level of understanding to what he's written. It's almost like you put in a codex and a filter over the top of it, and suddenly it jumps out. You can say, okay, I understand now what it is. So I would say that only in the last 10 years has that book become understandable by a large number of people.
So do you think it could be a way that he actually, he hooked up to the field, so to speak, and he actually just downloaded a huge amount of information and just, blurred it out, so to speak, in his
Yes, he did. And somebody might have got to him to prevent that from being translated properly, but he certainly had a sort of major high bandwidth uplink, and everything just got poured into him.
Yes.
I mean, this leads into a separate discussion, but one of the things that people level at synchromysticism is that how can you foretell events that have been created that come down the pipeline? How does anybody know that? And how can you say that the expiry date on Neo's passport being September the 11th, 2001 is relevant? And yet it is relevant, because if you perceive time as fourth dimensional, instead of perceiving it as a line from left to right that you're traveling along, if you perceive it as a spiral, and the timeline is the line of the spiral, as it goes down, the logarithmic spiral gets more and more dense toward the bottom. And if you drop a stone onto that spiral, the ripples from that stone are much more resonating with the timeline that you're traveling along. So it can be felt backwards, forwards, left, right, up, down, everywhere. So in a fourth dimensional space, time is not a flat linear thing. So synchromysticism is a very real phenomenon, and it's spotting notes and resonators and hints and stuff that appears as artifacts in our media, particularly film. And I think that The Empire Never Ended, Valis, connection to the field, all that stuff is an incredibly cogent and approachable example of a synchromystic event, particularly if you've got the background knowledge. When you read Valis, you're just thinking, this guy wrote this book, 25 years ago or something, maybe more. It's unbelievable. It was like 1974 when he had this experience. And the terminology almost didn't exist to describe it then. A few physicists like David Bohm might have been able to help him out. But aside from that, this kooky science fiction writer living in a derelict house with, a limited sort of set of resources to go out and explore these things. Nevertheless, his determination and his integrity and his compassion drove him to make this uplink with the field, and the information came down, and it's there for us all to see. So it's as if he's left us this artifact to say, okay, here it is. All you need to do is pick it off the shelf. It's, £5, $10, whatever. Go and read it, buy it and read it, and I suggest you do.
I think that there is ways that I don't know what to call it, the field, the universe, God, what have you, is putting things into our world in order to nudge it in the right direction or towards a direction. There's no right and wrong. It's just, this is what is happening. This is the plan, what have you, And I think that this might be, these things that happen. So people are having these incredible downloads of information, and consequently a few people begin to read it, and that changed their consciousness, and they go out into the world, and this spreads, ideas spread. I think it was Terence McKenna talked about the meme that, we can view it also as a virus in a way, that this is something that's spreading and changing things, and
that's right.
And it's incredible, and it's really no mystery if you understand or can incorporate that into your worldview, that this is how things takes place in our world, and same thing applies, I think, with just what you mentioned with the with future events or resonators, so to speak. Because again, I think that if it is true that the construct of the universe is holographic, then all these things are going to have and create an echo surrounding them. So if one,
yes,
for instance,
that's right, yeah.
if one, for instance, is involved in creative work where you kind of downloading material, or you're very kind of much in tune with the muse, you're just inspiration is something that flows through you, is something that the universe speaks when you're in a really creative zone, and
it doesn't. What it's doing is it's giving you the connections. The things are already there, but without the connections, and everybody talks about joining the dots and stuff. Without being able to do that, separate events seem unrelated, but everything is related to everything.
Yes.
Every event that happens affects every other event, and every element of the universe contains all